watching Swipe. Here's what we'll be bringing you in the next 10 minutes.
Find out why a medieval charter is being dusted off by digital artists who have big questions about our online privacy. I meet the electric cellist whose music you've heard more of than you think. And from fighting Nazis to exploring pyramids, we've got the big blockbuster releases for you in our video games review.
I've come to Sony Music in London this week to meet an artist whose work you will have heard on a whole range of major video games and movies. That's coming up a little bit later. First, let's get a look at some of the tech stories that made headlines this week.
Facebook said as many as 126 million Americans, that's about half the population of voting age, may have seen some of the 80,000 posts published by operatives based in Russia during last year's race for the White House. Twitter says it's found almost 2,800 accounts linked to the same agency. Russia denies spreading misinformation. We knew the Nintendo Switch was doing well with fans, but now the games maker has nearly doubled its full-year profits forecast. Nintendo expects to shift 14 million consoles by the end of its first year, overtaking the lifetime sales of its predecessor, the Wii U. And robots like Cassie here could one day save your life. Researchers have been putting the bipedal droid through some tests to prepare for the tasks involved in search and rescue efforts. The team behind it says robots with legs can go to a lot of places that wheels can't. Cassie could one day go into dangerous environments instead of risking the lives of human rescue workers.
Now, there are many issues that crop up in the debate around online privacy. Medieval history isn't one of them. Until now, that is. Here's Kit.
This has become a familiar sight for tech lovers, the Service User Agreement, that contract that pops up before we can use pretty much any piece of software or social network out there. We're so used to seeing them, many of us don't even read them before clicking agree. And this is what some are calling the medieval version, the 1217 Charter of the Forest. Of course, it didn't deal with how our private data is used online, but instead gave rights to ordinary citizens and limited the power of the king.
800 years since that charter was signed, digital artists, developers and programmers have come to the ancient medieval streets of Lincoln to reflect on how our rights have changed over the centuries and to ask whether we now need new protections, not from the monarch, but from our new rulers, the tech giants.
Now, when we're talking about fighting for the rights that we have in cyberspace, we can take some lessons from that Charter of the Forest document, which established the rights of ordinary citizens in the UK. And we can say, right now, here we are 800 years later, what rights do we need to establish within cyberspace?
So you'll see the surroundings of this church.
Learning from the past is a theme that runs through this festival, with digital art installations housed in some of the city's oldest buildings. Nicholas and Gabrielle have travelled from France to show off their work, which uses data captured from a cycle ride, combined with motion capture commands from gloves, creating animations in real time.
Today we don't know what will happen with our digital data. Who will use it? How many times? Who will decide whether it should become? And the idea is that here, with the gloves, with the gesture, we can control our past.
So is this about people regaining control of their data?
On the past.
Some of the other works hope to make us think about what we might be missing out on as we live more and more of our lives online.
To me, what is really important is the connection between the two people in real time in a space. So I suppose digital technology tends to link people who are far away, and you usually connect through words or sound or video. Here it's two people, quite often two strangers, who happen to play together, and they will see each other, talk to each other, and that's what interests me, this moment of encounter.
Digital art like this doesn't pretend to have the answers, but it's hoped it can distract us from our smartphones for long enough to help us think about how technology is changing our sense of who we are and the rights we have. Kit Bradshaw, Sky News, Lincoln.
Now, an international cello star might sound like an odd fit for a tech show like Swipe, but Tina Guo has played on the soundtracks to some of the biggest video games, and she's the reason I'm here at Sony Music in London.
It's performances like this that make it pretty clear why Tina Guo has become a soundtrack superstar. She's played the cello on hundreds of blockbuster titles in games and movies, from Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed to Wonder Woman and Sherlock Holmes. But the electric sound she's known for is very different to the one she grew up with.
I came from a very classical background. Both of my parents are music teachers, and I'm Chinese, so if you can imagine the Chineseness, right? Being super conservative, and they're both music teachers. I was basically forced to play classical cello for 8 hours a day from when I was 5 years old. And then I didn't start experimenting with kind of electronic music and different styles of music outside of classical until I was 19.
Tina did also get to play video games growing up, and later got her initial music work on games through word of mouth. Further projects came after famous Hollywood composer Hans Zimmer spotted her on YouTube, a platform she now says she should have got into earlier.
Careers are formed now on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, which is amazing because the audience, you can put up a video and people from all around the world can see it, can comment.
Tina's now racked up over 27 million views on her YouTube channel. She was up for a Grammy last year and has been described by others in the business as a heavy metal goddess on cello.
Whenever I meet women who've worked in gaming, I always like to ask them about the portrayal of females in video games. Is that something you've got particular views on?
I'm assuming you're referring to maybe sexy or more powerful feminine figures, but I personally don't think of that as a negative thing.
So have you ever felt a pressure to look sexy and be pretty?
It's funny, in the very beginning, this was maybe about 8-9 years ago, when I saw some comments online, and there was one comment that I won't forget because it was one of the first ones that were very extreme, but it was something like, oh, how sad for her. She was a good cellist, but now somebody must have gotten a hold of her and forced her to be over-sexualized and that stuff. I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't do anything. I don't want to do everything I do. It comes from me. So I think for me, it's just an expression of femininity. I don't think of it as weakness. I think of it as power.
Tina's in the UK touring and promoting her solo album, Game On, but I couldn't let her leave without giving us a demo, after I'd had a go, of course.
Can I pick up the cello?
Yes, you can.
I've never held an electric cello before.
This is a Yamaha electric cello. His name is White Walker, and
it's actually quite light.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
But then I've never held another cello.
Okay.
So you're going to let me play this?
Yes, go ahead. Be my guest.
How do I do this? Am I just literally...
Try it? Beautiful.
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 Enough already. Let's hear from Tina.
What a great way to segue into this week's video games review. Here's Alysia with 3 major titles for us.
Assassin's Creed Origins winds the clock right back to ancient Egypt, where you are playing as a guy called Bayek. He's a Magi, which is kind of like an ancient Egyptian law enforcer. And at the time, it's the Ptolemaic era, so Cleopatra is locked in a bitter feud with her brother for the throne, and Bayek's going to get caught up in these political machinations. Overall, Assassin's Creed has always been a game about exploring historical kind of settings and avenues and meeting these different people that you'll know from your history lessons. Now, because it's the Egyptian period, things are a little bit different. Whereas previous games were about verticality, this game's more open world and expansive. 2,000 years ago, they didn't have massive skyscrapers and buildings like Big Ben. So it's creative, it's beautiful to look at, it's got a great story. If you're a bit tired of the Assassin's Creed franchise, I'm not sure whether there's going to be too much new for you here, but as a historical nerd like me, I absolutely loved it. If you've never heard of Wolfenstein, here's a synopsis. You play as BJ Blazkowicz, who's a US kind of special forces soldier who's fighting in an alternate reality where the Nazis won World War II.
We gotta put the fighting spirit back in the American people.
The next bit is where it gets a little bit crazy. You also play through a level where you are rampaging through a Nazi science facility suspended above Venus, where you've got to blast through swathes of Nazi scientists because video games. It's kind of, Wolfenstein is a game of two halves. On the one hand, it explores issues of sexism and racism and anti-Semitism and really profound issues. On the other, you are dual-wielding an Uzi and blasting through Nazis. Essentially, Wolfenstein 2 combines kind of gritty, heart-wrenching realism with absurdity and massive set pieces. And that's a really powerful combination. If that's something that interests you, it's out now on PC, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. With Call of Duty World War II, the COD series is trying to return to its roots with, quote, boots on the ground gameplay. Get your head down! That's because previous Call of Duty games went really futuristic. You know, you could run on walls and there were laser guns and it was all super shiny and futuristic. But what the Call of Duty series was kind of known for was the first few games that were set as realistic World War simulations. Since interest has perhaps waned in the last couple of years, now Call of Duty is returning, and World War II is a way to kind of return to those bullet-strewn, muddy, brown, dirt battlefields that we've kind of seen in previous installments. What it does, and has always done well, it does really well here. You know, the multiplayer maps are really well designed, they're easy to pick up, score streaks are fun and fast and frantic, and there's a lot to get your teeth into.
Thanks for watching this week's show. Join us for more Swipe next time. See you soon. Bye-bye.